People think success in life is about brilliance. It's not. It's mostly about avoiding stupidity because the world runs on it. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to stay out of the way of people who act like they are. I learned that early. I watched men make fortunes in the 1920s and lose them in the 1930s. Smart people, lawyers, engineers, professors, all ruined by their own arrogance. They thought the laws of gravity didn't apply to them. Turns out gravity doesn't care about IQ. Rule number 1, avoid being stupid. It sounds simple, but it's the hardest rule to follow. Most people don't fail because they lack information. They fail because they can't keep their emotions in check. They overestimate what they know. They borrow too much. They gamble instead of think. I've seen it all in investing, in business, in marriages. People wreck perfectly good lives, chasing what they don't need because envy whispers louder than reason. Let me tell you something. You can't make yourself smarter overnight, but you can stop yourself from doing dumb things today. That's what I call practical wisdom. When I was young, I wanted to be right. Now I just want to avoid being wrong. That small shift changes everything. Avoid the parade of fools. Don't follow trends. Don't invest because someone on television told you to. And for heaven's sake, don't try to get rich quick. You don't need 50 brilliant ideas in a lifetime. You need 1 or 2 good ones. You don't screw up. And you don't get there by being smarter than everyone else. You get there by staying rational when others lose their minds. If you watch closely, the crowd always repeats the same mistakes. Booms and busts, greed and panic. They never learn because learning requires humility, and that's in short supply. So, while they chase excitement, you chase discipline. While they seek applause, you seek understanding. That's how you win the long game. Most investors think the goal is to beat the market. It's not. The goal is to avoid being beaten by yourself. Avoid stupidity, and you'll be surprised how smart you look over time. Because in a world that celebrates noise, silence looks like genius. In a world full of gamblers, patience looks like luck. And in a world chasing shortcuts, rationality is the ultimate edge. I've made enough mistakes for 10 men. But I learned this much. If you just avoid doing the dumb things, the envy, the ego, the impulsiveness, the good things have a way of taking care of themselves. So start with rule number 1. Tattoo it on your mind. The world runs on stupidity. Don't join the parade. The everything else, I'll tell you, every other rule is just a variation of that idea. 'Cause the real game isn't about brilliance. It's about survival. And survival favors the rational. Everyone wants to be a millionaire, but very few are willing to crawl through the mud to get their first 100,000. That's the brutal truth. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The first 100,000 is AB. Not because of inflation, taxes, or Wall Street. Because of human nature. Most people quit long before compounding even starts to work. They chase easy money. They switch plans every 6 months. They spend their raises on nonsense. Then they wonder why their money never works for them. Listen carefully. The first 100,000 is your test. It's not about the amount. It's about who you become trying to get there. When you earn your first 100,000 the hard way, saving, investing, and saying no 1,000 times, something shifts in your brain. You stop thinking like a consumer. You start thinking like an owner. That's when compounding stops being a theory and becomes your ally. People love to quote Einstein calling compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. But they forget he didn't get rich saying it. He got rich understanding it. You can read every finance book ever printed and still die broke if you don't internalize one simple fact. Your money only works after you've worked harder than your impulses. When Warren and I were building Berkshire, we didn't start with billions. We started with habits. We lived below our means. We didn't owe a dime to anyone, and we treated every dollar like a soldier. If one went to war, it better bring a few friends back. You don't need a genius IQ for that. You need patience and self-control. You'd be amazed how fast wealth accumulates when stupidity doesn't get in the way. The man who saves 10,000 a year for 10 years and compounds at a decent rate, he'll surpass the one who earns 10 times more but spends it all every single time. That's why I tell young people, stop obsessing about the stock market. Start obsessing about saving your first 100,000, because once you have that, the tables turn. You stop chasing money. Money starts chasing you. I've seen people go from nothing to financial independence, not because they found a secret formula, but because they mastered boredom. They stayed invested when others got distracted. They didn't interrupt compounding for something more exciting. Excitement is what kills investors. Patience is what makes them rich. And if you can't stand to watch your wealth grow slowly, then you'll never have any wealth to watch. Rule number 2 is simple but not easy. Get your first 100,000 and then let compounding take over. Don't cry about how unfair the system is. Don't wait for some miracle investment. Do the boring work. Because in finance and in life, the boring stuff works. When you hit that first 100,000, something magical happens. You stop feeling like you're pushing a rock uphill. You start to feel gravity working for you, not against you. And that's when you realize why so few people ever make it that far. They quit right before the miracle. So remember this, the first 100,000 isn't about money, it's about proof that you can delay gratification long enough to deserve wealth. Everyone wants compounding. Almost no one deserves it. If I had to pick one emotion that destroys more lives, marriages, and portfolios than any other, it wouldn't be greed. It'd be envy. Greed you can manage. You can bargain with it. But envy, it rots you from the inside. I've seen millionaires miserable because their neighbor made a little more. I've seen investors dump perfectly good stocks because someone else's went up faster. That's not intelligence. That's self-destruction, wearing a tie. Let me tell you something blunt. You can't get ahead in life if you're constantly checking the scoreboard. The other guy's success doesn't cost you a cent unless you let it. Rule number 3, avoid envy like a disease because it is one. Envy makes smart people do dumb things. It turns patience into panic, and it replaces gratitude with bitterness. In the 1950s, I watched friends who made small fortunes in real estate, good, steady businesses. Then, they saw others making quick money in the stock boom, so they sold what they understood to chase what they didn't. When the market crashed, they lost everything. Why? Because envy whispered, "You're missing out." That voice ruins more investors than any recession ever did. You think you're immune. You're not. Envy is built into human nature. It's the monkey brain comparing bananas, but you don't have to obey it. Warren and I made a habit of admiring success, not resenting it. When someone else made money, we thought, good for them. Then we went back to doing what we understood. That's discipline. Most people never figure that out. They think they're in a race. But money isn't a race. It's a game of staying power. You don't win by running faster. You win by not tripping over your own emotions. I once said envy is the only sin you can't have any fun with. Think about it. Lust, gluttony, even greed at least. They come with a little pleasure before the pain. Envy gives you nothing, just misery. And it's contagious. Social media has turned it into a full-time occupation. People measuring their lives by pictures of strangers. That's not living. That's psychological suicide by comparison. If you want peace and wealth, you need to kill that instinct. Be happy with what you have as long as you earned it honorably. Admire others, but don't imitate them, because imitation without understanding is the first step to ruin. The happiest people I know aren't the richest. They're the ones who stop keeping score. They understand that someone will always have more. More money, more talent, more luck. So what? The goal isn't to beat everyone else. The goal is to avoid beating yourself. If you can look in the mirror and say, I've made rational decisions. I've lived within my means, and I'm not envious. You're already wealthier than most billionaires, because envy is poverty of the soul. And no portfolio can fix that. So here's rule number 3 in plain English. Don't envy anyone. Admire the rational, ignore the flashy, and stay in your lane. The moment you stop competing with everyone else, you finally start compounding. Not just your money, but your peace of mind. People think success is about what you do. It's not. It's about what you refuse to do. Rule number 4, learn to say no firmly, frequently, without guilt. You can't have focus without rejection. And you can't have results without focus. Every year I see bright people destroy their potential because they try to do everything. They chase every opportunity, attend every meeting, and invest in every shiny new idea. What they end up with isn't wealth, it's exhaustion. Warren and I built Berkshire Hathaway by saying no 99 times out of 100. Not because we were geniuses, but because we were patient enough to wait for the one idea that made sense. That's not glamorous. That's discipline. People like to glorify hustle culture. They wear business like a medal of honor, but most of that activity is just disguised impatience. If you're doing 10 things at once, you're probably doing 9 of them badly. You want to know the secret to a long career in investing. Don't swing at every pitch. Sit on your hands until the odds are clearly in your favor. That's what I call waiting for the fat pitch. The one you understand deeply, and the one that makes sense both in logic and in price. Most people can't wait that long. They confuse inactivity with incompetence. They'd rather do something stupid than sit still. But in investing, as in life, inactivity is often the most intelligent move. If you study the truly great investors, you'll notice a pattern. They have fewer opinions, fewer trades, and fewer regrets. They pick their spots carefully and sit quietly the rest of the time. The same logic applies to life decisions. The wrong partner, the wrong deal, the wrong crowd. Say no early and save yourself decades of misery. I've always believed that opportunity cost is the hidden killer of success. Every yes steals time, energy, and attention from something better. You don't need to fill your calendar to fill your wallet. You just need to protect your attention like a scarce resource, because it is. I learned long ago that no is a full sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for being selective. The world will pressure you to be agreeable. It rewards politeness more than prudence. But remember, you're not here to please the world. You're here to survive it wisely. Every major mistake I've seen, both in business and personal life, came from someone who didn't say no soon enough. They invested in things they didn't understand. They partnered with people they didn't trust. They stayed quiet when they should have walked away. Saying no is like flossing unpleasant in the moment, but it prevents long-term decay. I once told a room full of students, the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. That's not cynicism. That's clarity. Because every yes carries a price tag. And the most expensive currency in life isn't money, it's time. You can recover lost money. You'll never recover lost focus. So if you want to follow rule number 4, practice this. When you're not sure, don't rush in. When everyone's excited, slow down. When something feels complicated, skip it. Clarity loves simplicity. Confusion loves company. And if you ever feel pressure to make a decision quickly, that's your cue to walk away. The best deals, like the best people, don't demand urgency. They reward patience. So, next time you feel the pull to say yes to everything, remember this. You're not paid for how much you do. You're paid for how well you choose. And most of the time, the smartest choice is no. If you want to survive long enough to get rich, you must learn one thing. Stay rational when everyone else loses their mind. That's rule number 5. And it sounds simple until the world goes crazy. I've lived through enough manias to know what collective insanity looks like. The Great Depression, the com bubble, the housing frenzy of 2007. Every one of them had the same story. Smart people doing stupid things together. You'd think experience would cure that disease. It doesn't. Every new generation convinces itself that this time it's different. Spoiler, it never is. Markets are driven by 2 forces, fear and greed. The trick is to stay sane while both are screaming in your ear. When everyone around you is euphoric, your job is to stay skeptical. When everyone is terrified, your job is to stay calm. That's the discipline of rationality. In 1973, I watched investors lose half their net worth and their minds with it. They sold wonderful businesses for pennies because the headlines scared them. Warren and I were buying not because we were fearless, but because we refused to be stupid. We knew the math didn't change just because the mood did. That's what separates speculators from investors. Speculators chase feelings. Investors chase facts. But most people can't tell the difference because they confuse volatility with risk. They think a falling price means danger. In truth, it's often the opposite. A falling price is opportunity if the underlying value hasn't changed. It takes emotional stamina to see that when everyone else is panicking. That's why rationality pays so well. It's rare. Let me put it this way. To outperform others, you don't have to be a genius. You just have to remain level-headed while they're losing control. That's harder than it sounds. 'Cause when markets boom, greed feels like logic. And when they crash, fear feels like wisdom. I've seen seasoned professionals dump their entire portfolio in panic. And amateurs double down on garbage stocks because they can't miss this opportunity. Both sides are guided by emotion, not reason. Rationality isn't about being cold. It's about being deliberate. It's about saying, I might be wrong, and checking your facts before you act. That humility is what keeps you solvent. When we bought See's Candy, people thought we were crazy paying that much for a candy company. But we ran the numbers. We understood the customer loyalty, the pricing power, the culture. We didn't care what Wall Street thought. We cared about cash flow. That's rationality in action. Ignoring noise, following logic. You don't need to predict the future to make money. You just need to respond intelligently to the present. The best investors I know spend 90% of their time waiting and 10% acting decisively. The rest of the world does the reverse, and that's why most people lose. They trade based on headlines, rumors, or the latest nonsense from the internet. They think information equals insight. It doesn't. Information without judgment is just noise pollution. Here's a truth you can take to the bank. Markets will always oscillate between fear and greed, but your job is to oscillate between patience and discipline. The world's madness is a permanent feature, not a temporary glitch. If you can keep your head when everyone else is losing theirs, the world eventually hands you a discount on everything worth owning. Rule number 5 isn't about intelligence. It's about temperament. Anyone can learn the formulas. Few can control their emotions when it matters. If you can do that, if you can stay rational when others go mad, you'll find that time itself becomes your ally. Because while others burn their fortunes chasing excitement, you'll quietly compound yours in peace. And in the end, rationality is the only edge that never goes out of style. If there's one habit that's made me rich, it's this. I stay within my circle of competence. Rule number 6, know what you don't know. It sounds humble, but it's deadly powerful. Most people pretend to understand everything. That's how they go broke. The truth is, ignorance isn't the problem. Denial of ignorance is you can be ignorant and still do fine if you know where the edge of your knowledge ends. But if you wander beyond that edge, you're gambling, not investing. I've watched people ruin themselves, chasing ideas they didn't understand. Crypto, tulips, meme stocks, you name it. Different century, same stupidity. Everyone wants to look smart. But the smartest people I've met are the ones who admit what they don't understand. When Warren and I started, we didn't know everything about every business, but we knew how to say that one's too hard. And that phrase has probably saved us more money than any spreadsheet ever did. Our circle of competence wasn't a wall, it was a fence. We could climb it if we learned something new. But we didn't pretend we were already on the other side. That's where hubris gets you killed. I once told a crowd, if you think you know everything, you're already a danger to yourself. The world is far too complex for that kind of arrogance. Look at the smartest men of the past century. Physicists, economists, bankers, half of them were certain they'd conquered uncertainty. Then came 1929, 1973, 2008. Reality humbled them all. The world doesn't reward overconfidence. It punishes it, just not immediately. That's why it fools people. Knowing your limits doesn't make you timid. It makes you rational. It tells you where you can play offense and where you should just stay on defense. I like to think of knowledge as a map. The parts you know are the cities. The parts you don't are the oceans. Most people drown trying to build bridges across water they've never tested. When I see an investor pontificating about industries he's never worked in, I already know how his story ends. It's not intelligence that separates winners from losers. It's restraint, the ability to say this is above my pay grade. And don't confuse curiosity with competence. You can read 10 books about oil drilling. It doesn't make you an expert. Real understanding takes years, mistakes, and scars. I've seen this lesson play out again and again. A young analyst dazzled by spreadsheets, confident he's found a hidden gem, he buys heavily. 6 months later, the hidden gem is a disaster. Why? Because the business had hidden problems the spreadsheet couldn't capture. Understanding numbers isn't the same as understanding reality. You can't model human behavior with perfect precision. Markets are moved by people, fearful, greedy, impatient people, not formulas. So, I keep my circle small but deep. If I understand a business, its economics, its culture, its competitive edge, I'll act decisively. If not, I don't touch it. And when someone asks for my opinion on something outside my circle, I tell them, I don't know. Those 3 words are the most honest and profitable words in finance. But here's the catch. Most people are too proud to say them. They'd rather fake confidence than risk looking ignorant. And that's how they end up truly ignorant and broke. The irony is, once you admit what you don't know, you actually get smarter, because now you're learning deliberately, not blindly. That's how you expand your circle slowly, intentionally, with proof. I never aim to know everything. I just aim to avoid being stupid where it mattered most. And that's a far easier task. So here's rule number 6. Define your circle of competence. Stay inside it. And if you must expand it, do it inch by inch, not mile by mile. Because in the end, the world doesn't pay you for what you claim to know. It pays you for what you can actually understand. If you want to solve hard problems in life or investing, you don't start by asking, how can I succeed? You ask, how can I fail? That's rule number 7. Invert. Always invert. This single habit separates clear thinkers from confused optimists. Most people build plans assuming everything will go right. I build mine assuming half of it will go wrong, 'cause it usually does. When you invert a problem, you strip away illusion. You see reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. If you want a happy life, don't ask, what makes me happy? Ask, what makes me miserable and how do I avoid it? If you want to make money, don't ask, what should I buy? Ask, what mistakes will make me lose money and how can I prevent them? That's the essence of inversion. It's not pessimism. It's rational defense. Success often comes not from brilliant actions, but from avoiding obvious blunders. You don't need to be right all the time. You just need to be wrong less often than the next guy. I learned this the hard way in my early years. Like most ambitious men, I wanted to be clever. I wanted to find the next big thing. But over time, I realized the best way to win was to focus on not losing. You can't control markets, politics, or luck, but you can control your exposure to stupidity. Avoid that. Avoid envy. Avoid overconfidence. Avoid people who constantly need rescuing. That alone puts you ahead of 90% of humanity. I've often told people, tell me where I'm going to die so I won't go there. It sounds funny, but it's profound. Avoiding failure is a form of wisdom because success takes care of itself if you stop doing what kills it. Inversion trains your mind to look for blind spots. It forces you to confront uncomfortable truths. When evaluating an investment, I don't ask what could go right. I ask what could destroy this idea completely. If I can't answer that confidently, I don't invest. This thinking applies far beyond finance. In business, instead of asking how to motivate employees, ask what destroys motivation and remove that first. In relationships, instead of asking how to find the right partner, ask what kind of person guarantees misery and avoid them. In life, instead of asking how to be brilliant, ask how not to be stupid. Every domain improves when you start in reverse. Inversion filters out noise and fantasy. It exposes fragility before it explodes. And it keeps your ego from writing checks your brain can't cash. You don't have to be smarter than others. You just have to be more realistic. When you invert, you make peace with the idea that the world is full of traps, and your job is simply not to step in them. It's a mindset of humility, not fear. Because once you admit how easily things can go wrong, you finally start building systems that survive. Warren and I didn't get rich by predicting the next Apple or Amazon. We got rich by avoiding ruin again and again and again. You can't compound if you're dead. And in investing, dead means broke. So before you dream about 10 baggers, dream about survival. Before you chase buy-in, practice avoidance. It's far easier to eliminate stupidity than to invent genius. And it pays just as well. So remember, when in doubt, invert. Ask yourself, what would an idiot do here? Then don't do that. You'll laugh. But that simple trick has saved me millions. Rule number 7 is the final one, but it connects all the others. Avoid stupidity. Say no. Stay rational. Know your limits. They're all just different ways of saying invert the problem. The world rewards those who think forward, but it protects those who think backward. And in the long game of life, protection is the real path to freedom. If you've listened carefully, you'll notice something. All 7 rules aren't about brilliance. They're about character. The world worships intelligence. I worship rationality, because I've seen plenty of geniuses go broke, but I've never seen a rational man starve. Let's look back. Rule number 1. Avoid stupidity, because avoiding idiocy beats chasing brilliance every time. Rule number 2. Get your first 100,000, not because it buys luxury, but because it teaches discipline. Rule number 3. Avoid envy, the dumbest sin, all pain, no pleasure. Rule number 4. Learn to say no, because your life's quality depends on what you decline, not what you accept. Rule number 5. Stay rational when others go mad. The world will lose its mind every decade or so. You can't join them. Rule number 6. Know what you don't know. Arrogance kills faster than ignorance. Rule number 7. Invert. Always invert. If you can't figure out how to succeed, at least figure out how not to fail. That's it. No mystical secrets. No motivational fluff. Just practical wisdom earned through scars, not seminars. People often ask me, Charlie, what's the shortcut? There isn't one. There never was. Wealth and wisdom grow the same way. Slowly, quietly, one rational decision at a time. If you can master your mind, your money follows. If you can't, nothing else matters. I've met people with high IQs who made ruinous choices. They overanalyzed everything except their own behavior. They couldn't manage themselves, so they tried to manage the world. That never ends well. Real intelligence isn't the ability to make things complicated. It's the ability to keep things simple when everyone else is tangled in noise. A rational life is not glamorous. It's not filled with dramatic highs or heroic turns. It's mostly quiet consistency, doing the boring, correct thing long enough for it to matter. The world doesn't celebrate that kind of success. It celebrates the loud ones, the gamblers, the dreamers, the fools who get lucky. Then it forgets them a decade later. But rational people, they build legacies that last longer than excitement. You want proof? Look at Warren. Look at Berkshire. Look at what patience and rationality built over 60 years. Not a streak of brilliance, just a lifetime of avoiding disaster. And you can do the same. You don't need a degree, a pedigree, or permission. You just need the discipline to think clearly and act slowly. Remember, every bad decision in your life will come from one of two things: acting when you should have waited, or envying when you should have appreciated. Everything else is just noise. I'm not saying you'll live without mistakes. I've made plenty, but I never repeated the big ones, and that's the difference. The world punishes impulsive people and quietly rewards the patient. You can choose which group you belong to. And if you ever find yourself overwhelmed, go back to the basics. Ask yourself, am I being stupid? Am I being envious? Am I rushing when I should wait? Those 3 questions will save you from 90% of life's disasters. Because success isn't about genius. It's about surviving your own weaknesses long enough for compounding to do its work. So, here's my closing advice. If you want a rational life, stop searching for extraordinary opportunities. Focus on avoiding ordinary stupidity, because that, my friends, is the surest path to both wealth and peace. Wisdom sounds pleasant when it's printed in books, but in real life it comes with a price tag, usually paid in pain, boredom, and time. People admire the results of wisdom, not the process that creates it. They see the compound returns, the calm demeanor, the patience, but they never see the years of restraint behind it. Wisdom is forged in silence. In the days when nothing happens, when you hold instead of act, when you shut up instead of argue, when you save instead of spend, that's the part nobody wants to hear. Rule following sounds easy when you're reading it on a screen. But try saying no to a sure thing investment everyone's hyping. Try watching your friends double their money on something you don't understand. Try standing still while the crowd dances around you. That's the test, and that's the price. Wisdom never arrives through comfort. It arrives through humiliation. The first time you lose money doing something stupid, that's tuition.